Hello, Shashank. Good evening.
Hello, boss. Good evening. How are you doing?
Yes, sir. I'm good. Good. How are you?
I'm awesome as always.
That's
And how are
nice.
things going?
With me personally, yes, everything is going good. But there are other reasons why we are on this call. I mean, on this discussion right now,
Yes.
which is there are a lot of other things going on. The primary issue right now happens to be the Tirupati Laddu incident,
Yes, sir.
right?
It's,
So
yeah,
that
it's
was
been
the whole idea,
a
right? We'll get together
big spill
and
out.
so
Yep.
you'd have seen the news, right? You'd have heard of what's happening with the Tirupati, and the politicians are involved, celebrities are involved, other people are also involved, and
Yes.
apparently most people find uh, this to be very disturbing, especially with the
Mm-hmm.
adulterers involved,
Mm-hmm.
and especially this against one of the religious beliefs that these things are not something they're supposed to be, and also the other ingredients, for example, the pig lard which is used is again when other religions don't accept it either, right? Neither the beef
Yes.
tallow nor the pig lard nor the fish oil, what is that, most religions are against it, but
Mm-hmm.
it was found. So seems like this wasn't the first time. There has been such incidents before as well. So that is the whole point of this discussion today. We'll just deep dive and see when it started, since how long it's been going on. Has anything been done to change it or not?
Yes, sir. Definitely. I would be open to that discussion. And I think it's a necessary topic that we have to cover. If we don't cover this, I mean, of course, the awareness is necessary amongst the people.
Yes, sir. So what is your take with based on what you've seen and heard? What is your take? What is your first impression on these things?
Yeah, so the first impression being that, of course, what everybody thinks, it is immoral to do these things. Just putting a blind eye onto the people, not even willingly, just forcefully putting a blind eye onto the people of a certain religion in order to increase your profits and get away with using cheaper ingredients, and in some cases getting away with willingly um, feeding things to people that they do not want to eat. I think that's a whole new level of wrongness that you can get into. And speaking of the main Tirupati incident with the whole TTD being Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanams, that's the organization that handles the Tirupati pilgrimage, the entire site. It's being looked over by the TTD institution. So just a brief history. The Tirupati Laddu has a history of more than 300 years. It dates back to 1715. So it's not something that was started, let's say, 20 or 30 years ago. It's something that has had a long line of history, and it has a lot of cultural significance as well. It was offered as sort of a bhog to Venkateshwara, who's the deity in Tirumala and Tirupati. So it has a long line of history, and I would say a kind of a documented history, but yeah, most of it is folklore. But yeah, people have managed to find its traces back to 1715. So yeah, that has quite a lot of history. And coming to the next topic, why this entire controversy? Why is it coming to light now? So people might have gone onto the news, even if they do not watch the news, Instagram articles, um, news articles. They make sure that they reach you with this news. So every single person must have heard about this particular mess up that has happened. I wouldn't call it as a mess up, though. In my own opinion, I think if you're using such ingredients for such a long time, it has to be intended, if it is at all true. So yeah, the first spill out of this incident happened when uh, Chandrababu Naidu, uh, the chief minister of the state, puts accusations on the Tirupati Laddu, stating that they have been using beef tallow and animal fat when the other party was in power, the other party being YSRCP. So he puts on allegations that this Tirupati Laddu, the sacred offering to the deity over there, contains a whole assortment of adulterants which are not supposed to be there. The first one being beef tallow and animal fat, and there are also accusations of vegetable oil, which is, you know, not a really healthy thing. You see palm oil and vegetable oil being used in all sorts of junk food nowadays. So adding this into the offering, into the prasad that the people get, is not a good thing. And there's also accusations of fish oil as well, although fish oil being the less popular among these allegations, because the reason being that fish oil, when you consume and use fish oil, you kind of get to know of its presence by the smell itself, because it has such a pungent smell that even a person who does not consume it, or who does not know of what it is or how it is going to get to know that something is fishy, pun intended over there. So uh, obviously fish oil is a much less popular accusation amongst these, but yeah, beef tallow and animal fat are the most trending things nowadays with these news articles. So Chandrababu Naidu basically accused that YS Jaganmohan Reddy, the ex chief minister who led the Congress government, YSRCP, was behind the adulteration of the ghee that is being used in the making of the laddu, the offering. So just just another tangent that I'm going through here. The ghee that is coming, that is being used in the preparation of this laddu, comes from AR Dairy Foods. So it's a local dairy farm. It's a self-sufficient farm. They have their own factory. They have their own procedure, their own quality checks. So that's where the source of ghee comes from. And there have been multiple lawsuits as well upon the AR Dairy Foods farm itself. And there's sort of a bigger issue that is being pointed out here. So a few days back, on 19th of September, Deputy CM Pawan Kalyan, the famous actor, he verbally attacked two of the previous chiefs of TTD, the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam's trust. The two chiefs that were heading the organization, he verbally attacked both of them, stating that they might be behind the entire controversy here. Um, he also accused them of seeing the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthana as a place of business rather than a place of pilgrimage, rather than a sacred place. So this was the entire controversy that went down, and it has not gone down ever since. And the most interesting thing here the most interesting thing being that even though there are so many accusations, even though there are so many controversies that are surrounding that place, the faith of the people in God never wavered. As in, even if you just look at the facts here, the facts stating that there have been more than 13 lakh laddus being sold in the past 4 days itself, that speaks volumes. That tells that the people just do not care about these accusations. I think care would be the wrong word. I think that they just have a level of trust that they wouldn't really go ahead and wander with these things, with these thoughts, and they would let their belief in God being wandered. So yeah, just the numbers itself speaks volumes here. And there's a whole bigger issue here. The underlying issue being that another sector is being attacked by Pawan Kalyan himself. I'm not gonna take names here, but yeah, he did attack another community altogether with these accusations, with the names that he mentioned of the two previous chiefs. I'm not gonna name them again. So yeah, this is what entirely went down, and those are the facts.
Okay. So you've mentioned about the political aspect of it, slightly bringing the
Yes.
religious aspect of it as well. Certain communities, or maybe a specific community, was involved somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Again, these are again in the basic stages. We don't know the output. There are several things needs to be considered. First and foremost, would be if the report which has been published, is it accurate or not, right? And second, was the chain of possession followed strictly, right? So assuming
Yes.
that if there was the laddu was actually tested, and during the testing process, or during the person who tested it, there were
Mm-hmm.
no changes made during that time, or if it
Mm-hmm.
was falsified. There are so many things. One, both sides argue both. For example, you have one political party arguing that
Mm-hmm.
this happened because of during your regime, so you should be responsible. Another one says, no, this happened 5 days, 7 days after we hand over the political, as in the chief ministry, to you. So it means you should take responsibility for it. So both are going on each other, though, right? So let's
Yes.
park that aside for a minute. First, is this the first time it's happening? That's the question, right? But it's not. Uh, Actually, this started way before 2017. There has been these allegations made even in 2017 somewhere, where the statements of adulterants, different part or different members of the board of TTD were involved.
Mm-hmm.
The contractor and other things which they were involved in were somewhat compromised, and several of those discussions happened. In 2019, however, again the animal fat allegation came about again. They had the same issue. The animal fat's been used, and they did investigate, and there was a result as well. So here's one thing I can observe is this incident which happened right now may not be fully political as well, because this accusation has been made for a very long time, right? Based on what I know, 2017 is where I've heard, as far as I've heard, but this could have been going on for longer as well, or maybe it wasn't that evident, but 2017 this definitely was in news. Now, uh, if if it's between Chandrababu Naidu and Jagan Mohan Reddy, if it's a feud between them, then
Yes.
it's a new issue, meaning that maybe it might not have that much validity. Potentially, again, we don't know
Mm-hmm.
for a fact, so potentially there could not be much to it. But if it's going on for a long time, wherever there is
Mm-hmm.
smoke, there has to be fire. Keeping that in mind, let's go to the 2019. I couldn't find a lot about this 2017 apart from the basic discussions.
Mm-hmm.
2019, there was that discussion and the argument about the prasadam, what the prasadam is, and how it is. Like you mentioned, Tirupati Venkateshwara is a famous deity, if not the
Mm-hmm.
richest deity of South India, or even North for that matter. As one of those devotees come in and they uh, shower with riches to Tirupati, right? And it's always been in such a way that the place makes a lot of money, so they don't have a problem with funds. So who's managing it, how it's been managed, that is something we'll get to in a minute. And apart from the management, the initial discussions came in terms of initial complaints came in terms of the darshana itself. There were tickets offered, special darshana, advanced darshana, like extreme darshana. Like they had different terms for it, and each darshana would cut some line, because as if you've been to Tirupati, you know how big the queues are. You don't get
Yes.
to just walk in and worship the god. You have to spend a huge amount of time on these queues, and
Mm-hmm.
after doing all of that, you get a glimpse of 10 seconds, and then they push you off. They shove you off to the next person, like, for the next person to come in, right? So that's how it
Yes.
is. Right? And so they made these new things which would again cut corners. So the people who pay more get to view it
Mm-hmm.
quickly, right? So they brought
Yes.
them, and somewhere that became a scam in itself, right? So the 2019 was the animal fact. As the discussion goes on, they did investigate it, and they found out that there were no such adulterants mentioned in the 2019 samples, right? So
Yes.
that entire issue stopped right there, saying that no, what, nothing was found, so which means this is just a rumor. Let's let it go. But over here for 2024, the sample
Mm-hmm.
was used, and the sample did come with a result. So I was just watching this news channel, and they did have the report, and the report did mention the contents of it. And in fact, refer to several of those channels just to be sure they're not falsifying the evidence. But several of them have the same report, which has the same amount of information now, right? In terms of animal
Yes.
fat, pork lard, beef talon, fish oil, and so
Mm-hmm.
on, right? And
Yes.
now, having said all of those things, we've covered the political part. We've covered the potentially different sects of different religions could be involved in terms of management, because we know that the management is not exactly the temple. I think this is something which we wanted to discuss as we progress further. We would discuss who is managing it and whatnot. But
Mhm.
as of now, it's not a religious organization. It's more of a business at this point, because it's not run based on how a religious institute would have been run. Typically, it's not how it's run, right?
Yes.
We have a board, and the board has duties. The board has to deliver profit. The board has to make money. Now, we've also had those incidents where people spoke of how the tenders which were given out in terms of these places. By the way, good news that I think Karnataka has got, Nandini's got the tender again, right, for
Yes.
Tirupati
Yeah.
Laddu.
Recently they got it.
Yep, I think we had a jackpot there. So that's nice. Something turned out good, I guess, though, for in a way. So that's another thing, right? There could be, again, if you're looking from a business perspective, yeah, there could be someone. We've seen how business is run, right? Every time something is done, someone tries to take the top layer off, right? They want to benefit out of it,
Yes.
and everyone is doing the same thing. End of the day, something. Now, if you're a religious person, this
Mm-hmm.
would be the last thing in your mind. If this is actually if you're a devotee of a certain any religion for that matter, right? You wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be you wouldn't be planning on, if you're completely devoted, if that's the way you're going through, you're spiritual and everything, that's not the
Mm-hmm.
first thing you look at. But if you are not devoted that way, right? If you're looking at it from a purely business perspective, then obviously you're going to make something out of it. There's no
Yes.
one to blame. I think someone, anyone would have done it probably, right? They could have taken, what, to me this is nothing. I don't believe in this lord or this god, nor do I believe in your religion, so I don't really have to abide by the same thing. Let me make some money. That's
Yes.
one way of going about it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm pausing over there as well. We'll come back to it. The third thing is, you spoke about the how things have been checked before they're brought in. Things have been checked. I think at some point you would explain in detail the process of making laddu and all those things. But just to
Yes.
give a brief over here, I want to highlight the fact that uh, there is a QC methodology which is followed. Both the
Mm-hmm.
sides, that is the supplier, would have their own QC checks in terms of analyzing the quality of the product which they are delivering. And there is also a contract which stipulates them to do certain QC tests as well. And
Yes.
Tirupati also has its own QC test, which is a three-form QC test. They have to undergo three different layers of it, and if it doesn't pass through it, they'll have to be sent back. And one of the political spokesperson also mentioned they have sent 40 tankers of ghee back because they did not meet the requirements. So, which means
Yes, they did.
this has happened.
Yes, it has happened before, and most of these quality checks, I think they're the most important step of this in order to make sure that none of the adulterants get in. But there can be, obviously, from a business standpoint, there can be modifications that can be made to it. If the entire board is agreeing on compromising something, then obviously the quality check is going to be cut off for that particular element, and obviously it's going to seep through. And yeah, like you mentioned, apart from spiritualism, if the person in not one person in particular, if the people on the board of the managing committee of the temple, they are interested in filling their pockets, of course they're gonna take off the top layer and they're gonna put it right in their pocket. And like I mentioned before, the accusations said that the people who were running the temple, um, and it is mentioned about the 2019 incident as well. uh, so the people that were running the temple were more interested, allegedly more interested, in making it as a source of business rather than treating it as a pilgrimage. So yeah.
Speaking of which, there's another, I think, another complaint or incident which was recorded the foreign currencies which were deposited in the hundi, in Tirupati hundi,
Mhm.
the place
Mhm.
where they were counting that foreign currency, someone was also stealing that kind of money, that money as well, though. Again, that's another incident which was caught, which was discussed again. So it seems like there was always been some kind of scam involved with the management,
Yes.
right? And the 29 incident, in a way, they did the research, they went and they checked the information, and they came out that there was no adulterants found, and this is all going good. Again, now the question again comes in: what was the sample they checked? Was it was the sample true? Were the
Mhm.
results true? And the chain of possession again, was it tampered any which ways from the time? The same thing applies back then, also applies now. For example,
Yes.
if the particular sample which was used, the laddu which was used, we don't
Mhm.
know, assuming that we don't know who this person initiated this process, right? So guessing that
Mhm.
you, Shashank, you took the laddu and you took it to the lab and you tested the laddu based on the information you've heard. Now, the question which we need to ask is, from the Tirupati's management point of view, or anyone for that matter, is
Mhm.
is that was the laddu from Tirupati itself? Is the first question, right?
Mhm.
And during the time that laddu was sent to this person, was it adulterated before that or after that? That's a question. Again, both parties are arguing back and forth. Now, the
Yes.
chain of possession is from the time you acquire the laddu till the
Mhm.
time you've sent it to the lab and tested it. There is a huge
Mhm.
gap in between, right? The
Mhm.
transportation or whatever that is required. During this time, is there a possibility that you could have adulterated the laddu just so that you can make a news of it? That's again a possibility. We can't just rule it out as well, right?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
if if what the other party is claiming, that this was the current party which is doing all of these things just to just to make them look bad, and make them take the fall for all the potential wrong things, that's one way to go about it. But the question
Mhm.
is, what has this party have to gain? Because over here it doesn't look like a shakedown, looks more like a crackdown. As in, as soon as they came in power, they started investigating this. If they are doing this to themselves, they wouldn't you know do this harshly, first and foremost because it's attracting too much attention on themselves. And
Mhm.
they could have taken their time, but it seemed like they were waiting for this opportunity. As in, this has been going on for a while, and
Mhm.
as soon as they've got it, they just jumped on it and they wanted to fix it before it could become delayed, and then that blame could be pinned on someone else. You want to act more reactively at this point or proactively in this point. So I feel
Yes.
the current government did not want to take the blame when this comes out later. So they immediately
Mhm.
jump the gun and say, you know what? Let us investigate first. Let's put it out there. So no one can blame us tomorrow that we were responsible for it.
Yes. So there are multiple ways of looking at it. Of course, we have to consider the point wherein the two parties that are concerned here, what do they have to gain about it? On one hand, uh, the Congress party that's the YSRCP that was in power when these allegations first came in place, they had practically nothing to gain with these allegations, as in it was in their standpoint, it was a bad thing, knowing that such a good place of religion was being tarnished in the name of adulteration. But then again, that was playing towards the benefit of the opposition at that point, stating that the current government that's here right now, the YSRCP, is not doing a great job at they're not very good at what they're doing, so let's just get rid of them and let's bring ourselves into power. And like you mentioned, there's also a good possibility of the sample being adulterated on the way. Nobody knows what happened over there, and it might just be a way of the ruling party as of now taking a measure in order to protect themselves for the future, just armoring themselves for the future, hoping that they don't take the fall for this, or they don't get caught in the crossfires for this, because everything that they've worked hard for so long is going to go to waste in that entire state and in the entire country because of the scale of this allegation. So yeah, obviously both of these parties have something to lose with these allegations, and either of them have something to gain. So it's really hard to say it's really hard to pinpoint on what actually happened and what's the true motive, or is there a third party that's gaining a bigger upper hand in this by getting both of these parties to fight with each other, and the people are gonna end up not trusting either one of them, and they're gonna go with the third option, which is when the third person steps in who is gaining from all of these things. So it's a really intertwined thought, but yeah, nobody can say for sure as to what's going on.
Precisely. So, but the problem over here is more than that. So now we see parties arguing, but the damage was not done to these other political parties. Again, the damage to themselves can be repaired, but the damage was done to something more more
Yes.
important than that, right? First and foremost, it damaged millions of devotees and their faith. They have eaten beef, which they don't eat normally. Most Hindus don't consume beef, right? And
Yes.
so they have consumed it, and that has affected their religious beliefs itself. It has pretty much shaken their beliefs. Still, like, all my life I've been told this, this, and this, but this has
Hmm.
happened, and I have been involved. There could be a lot of Brahmins who don't consume any kind of meat, for that matter, right? So you have fish oil, you have pork, you have beef. So it means they've had their own, set of meat consumption as well over here. And other than that, the damage it did to the temple itself, right? Again, this is
Hmm.
not any temple or any institute for that matter, right? This is one of the most renowned, famous, and money-making machine for Karnataka, for Andhra, as well as for India, right?
Yes.
This is a big place. The damage it did to that particular institute
Hmm.
is huge, and can we limit to that? No, the damage it did to the entire Hindu faith itself was a big thing now, right? Because the question right now is, this has affected the faith of Sanatana Dharma itself, where
Hmm.
some people also end up mocking it, calling it, well, this is what happened to you guys. Like, what are you gonna do about it? This is what happened. So the question arises is, what are people going to do about it? You can fix it politically, right? But
Hmm.
the damage done to the reputation or to the belief system or to religion cannot be repaired, nor can it be compensated as well. So that what is done is done, right?
Yes.
There's nothing you can do about it. The only thing which
Hmm.
we can do about at this point is, how do we fix these things going forward? Where is this? So all you have to do is understand, why did this happen? What are
Hmm.
the causes for this to happen? How do we
Hmm.
avoid these causes, and how do we stop it in the future, right? And
Yes.
this has opened up several possible, because there are more reasons or more potential reasons for this to go where it is right now, than
Hmm.
just saying that, what, someone made a mistake, right? Because it's not that simple as someone made a mistake. I know there is definitely a political game here. There's a religious game. There is a corruption somewhat involved. There's so many things which have been played in, but there
Hmm.
is always a root cause to all of it, right? Something caused the landslide, which resulted in all the potential errors that we have right now. So that is where we're
Yes.
going to investigate.
Exactly. One of the domino pieces, instead of being stood up, just fell down, and as a cascading effect, the entire stack fell down, and the collateral damage being the people. Obviously, every single time some of these big incidents happen, the collateral damage are going to be the people, the ultimate ones who suffer the most are the people who are essentially the standbyers. As in, if you just take into consideration, if this would have happened in another scenario, if this would have happened um, with another set of people, it wouldn't be the same case. It would have been a huge issue. But the fact that nobody is even, you know, not even one significant action has been taken place so far, apart from multiple lawsuits being filed, I don't think that there's been much taken place apart from just, just a few things. If this would have been a much more serious topic, apart from Hindus being the ones who are suffering, I think this would have been, reaching a far higher place. And the fact that it's not, and the action is not being taken immediately, it just points out more fingers towards us, and there are more people all across the globe just looking, having their eyes towards us, just waiting for us to take action, asking us what we're going to do, literally like taunting us as to what we're going to do. So it really begs the question, what are we going to do? What can we do? Apart from just obeying the people in power who are drunken with their power, and ultimately they're the ones who are going to take the decisions for us.
So we've discussed about potential reasons why this could have happened, right? Let's use the simple analysis methodology and see what we can come up. First and foremost, where was there there is a QC system in place, so that we understand that Tirupati has its own quality checks, and which
Hmm.
is a three part quality check. It has to meet all the three requirements. Only then it will be
Hmm.
moving to the kitchen, and then
Yes.
whatever happens in the kitchen. And they also have another quality check which is done by the supplier. There is
Hmm.
also based on the tender information, part of the contract they have certain obligation that they need to fulfill, and unless until it meets those requirements, they don't take the gig. Now let's just say here's another thing that I want to highlight as well. I think the ghee which costed or the during the tender what was around 1,000 rupees per barrel or per somewhere around that, I think per liter per barrel something they charge. So it has been
Hmm.
given to 300 and change something, so roughly 60-65% discount is what they're providing, right? The person who got the tender. Now the question
Hmm.
people is like, how can they make 65% reduction of the product? What would be the quality? That should be the first point. Like, how can someone give you the 65% discount on the product which has a market value of 1,000 rupees, right? And
Yes.
that should have been the first red flag. However, what did they do to identify why they got it for such low prices? Rather than saying
Hmm.
we got it for low, why did they get it for low? What is the reason for them to produce that kind of quantity for that kind of price and have that over here? Which means either it has, there are two ways you can do it. One, they would have they were doing this in terms of less profit oriented way, or
Hmm.
two, they are committing some kind of adulteration in their products, right? Those are two options you could think of. So I don't know what investigation the TTT did in terms of identifying it first. Second, assuming that they've been doing this for a while,
Hmm.
at some point, when you, I come from a quality background myself. So when you are auditing certain things and you have other person who looks into your work, somewhere deep down you tend to get comfortable, right? And
Yes.
assume that somewhere someone understood, you know what, we both understand each other, we've been doing this for a while,
Hmm.
and so far your work has been good. Let me not look into it anymore. Maybe that's a possibility, right? And
Yes.
assuming that happened, someone got lenient. Again,
Hmm.
I'm giving them the benefit of doubt, saying that someone got lenient because they've trusted the work for so long. They
Hmm.
assume that this person would have delivered the same kind of quantity, and the other
Hmm.
person misused that trust. That's one way of going about it. The second way is both of them were in cahoots and they know what, I am not going to mark you off for this quality audit whatsoever. You
Hmm.
push whatever you want to push. We'll have
Hmm.
it. Neither of us don't have to worry about it. Let's just make money. That's possibility number two,
Yeah.
right? Both are valid in either which ways. We don't know which one is true. Assuming both of them are a possibility, we'll keep them aside again. Next
Hmm.
question comes in. So the problem was a tender. The tender isn't. So people who are involved, these guys could be the reason. But is that the
Hmm.
only reason? No, it goes furthermore. And the furthermore is people who are involved, and these guys governed certain things. It wasn't the temple authorities who were directly governing all these things. It was someone else who was involved and they were governing, right? And they
Hmm.
made the mistakes, right? Now you could,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it could be from a different religious background. They could be an atheist. They could just be money minded. They could be whatever it is. They don't have the
Hmm.
same affiliation, nor do they have the same respect for the God or the service which is provided, because they have a different agenda, right?
Yeah.
And that caused them to make some errors. That caused them to be lenient. That caused them to go into a money-minded way, and looking at profit, they let go of culture, tradition, whatnot. That's the second part of it. Now comes the question: why were someone else controlling it? Like, why wasn't the temple involved? Now, that is where the main question happens. I think that's another thing which you want to discuss as well, because for most people might not know, temples in India are not controlled by the temples themselves; they're controlled by the state. So this is the
Yes.
only religious institute which is not governed by their own community; it's governed by the state. So meaning other religions, whatever churches or mosques you have, they have it's run by the churches or mosques, so they get to see what is good for them and they update them. The same. But
Mhm.
now, like for example, you earn money and your family earns money. You decide what's good for your family. You make that kind of allocations and you take care of it and you ensure everyone's got quality. Assume that I step in now and I take your money and I decide what's good for your family. Then somewhere down
Mhm.
the line, I decide you need to have this, and I'm taking my cut.
Yes, exactly. That's where the wrong part comes in. Either make it equal for everyone, or just don't make the rule at all. And I think that's the best way to go about it. Either just treat everyone the same, or just make certain rules for certain people and have them be at war at each other for the rest of the time, and just don't hope for peace to come by. And that's what the bigger underlying issue has been as of now. All of the Hindu temples, they are coming under the governance of the government of India itself. Whereas if you look at the other counterparts, you don't see that same thing being abided over there. There are separate institutions, autonomous institutions being established for other counterparts in this case, not taking any names. So, yeah, autonomous institutions being established where they have their own law, they have their own set of rules and regulations, and whatever they seem fit is what they end up doing in the first place. So, and I think there have been a few changes being proposed in this case. Uh, of course, there have been a few bills being passed, and one bill just about to be passed as of now. It's still waiting on the approval from multiple sources. But yeah, like you mentioned, there are a lot of differences of opinions amongst different communities of people. And I think that in order to bring them closer together, in order to stop them from fighting each other, either just make one rule for all, or just don't expect peace altogether. I think you agree with me on this, or do you have a different opinion?
I agree with you. Here's the thing, right? So either everyone should have the same rule, which means that all of them should be brought into the government or institutes where the others control it, or neither should be controlled, right?
Yes.
It's not fair that one side has been doing it. Let's just go back for people who don't know what this is. So this
Mhm.
entire thing comes goes back way before, and not something which happened recently. So there was this Madras regulation from the 1817, right? Religious Endowment Acts of 1863, and all of these. This is again which was during the time of British as well, right? So when the British were ruling India, and they decided that we'll bring the temples into the government so that we can make money out of it. That's the whole.
Yeah.
That's where all of this started, right? So temples have been controlled by the government, and whatever funds go in temple, the government takes a cut. There is a tax which
Hmm.
the temple has to pay, and then
Hmm.
that's where the British Raj started involving in these things. And once the British left, the government at that point in time, Congress, we've
Hmm.
let go so many things of what British did. The British has given us so many things, have taken us a lot more than what they've given us as well. We could have kept good things what they left us with, right? But we chose to have this one instead. We retained this law where the temples would still be. Uh, I wouldn't even say utilized incorrectly. I would just say this is just fraud, blatantly. This is just
Yes.
a fraud activity where it's stealing, and ironically, people like us, the devotees, we've been funding this fraud since the beginning of time. As in, we put the money in temples, and the money goes to the government. We pay tax based on the income, as income tax. We pay tax based on the items we purchase. We pay tax for GST. And how many taxes are we paying? All of the money that we have, no matter where we are putting it, goes to the government. right?
Yes.
And how did all of this go? And yet nobody knows that this exists. There's a lot of people over here within the same country that they
Mhm.
don't know that Hindu temples are not run by the temples themselves, but that they're run by the government. Since the time the British were involved, that
Mhm.
entire framework that they set up, that the money which comes out of the out of the temples should be given to us, whereas the churches and mosques you could run them yourselves, you can decide what's good for your church or your mosque. For the temples we decide what's good and what's bad. And the question is, why was it a partiality made? Were the British against Hindus for some reason? Not really, because Hindu temples were very rich since the beginning of time. This goes back to the earlier time as well. Most southern, again, this I'm talking about in the context of southern kingdoms. They use temples in a form of banks as well. They use money moved to temples, and temples were also the place where scholars would show up. Musicians, artists, dancers, all of them would congregate and they would express their views, and they would start participating. Studies would go on, and they used temples like a form of a bank where the king would share funds to the temple, and temple would allocate it to people, right? So the
Yes.
temples, what happened in the Padmanabha Swami temple in Kerala, right? When they opened the locks, how much money, how much wealth was found there, right? This is how it's been historically. So they knew this is a gold mine, so they chose to go with the temples. That was what the British, the entire East India Company, which was involved in India, was there to loot. They all they did was they looted as much as they could, and then they left. We know the story is, again, it's not a new thing. So we knew the British were always here to loot. When they
Mhm.
left, so all the rules they made was also in terms of looting, what was best for them. So when they left, our government should have made away with this law. They should have said, this is a law meant to loot, pillage, and rob. Why do we have it? Let's remove it. But apparently, Congress did not want to do it back then.
Yes, sir. Exactly. And let me just put into context as to, everything that you just said makes a whole lot of sense. And let me just add on to that. So, as you know, before the whole British colonialism took place, temples were vastly rich. Temples were essentially, like you described, the banks. They held on to enormous amount of wealth. And when the first British people came in, they saw these temples and they looked at us as a source of income, as a source of exploitation. And what they did was, in order to weaken the hold on those temples, they played the bigger game here. They painted the larger picture, wherein they just weakened the entire Hindu community itself. And like everybody knows, before the British era came by, majority were Hindus in India, the Akhand Bharat that I'm talking about. So when that happened, the entire community, how did they weaken that exactly? What they did was they essentially replaced the Gurukul system with the Western education system, which even today is followed. We study things that we don't require. We do things that has no meaning at all. We study things that are of no use, and we essentially learn things that have no purpose other than a propaganda to project upon. The propaganda being that you are supposed to be a good employee, you are supposed to listen to your teacher, you're not supposed to work with your friends, you're not supposed to copy in your exams, you are supposed to work individually, all alone, no teamwork, nothing, just focus on your studies, nothing else. Essentially, we're being taught to be a good employee in our schools and in our colleges. You're supposed to keep your head down, etc., etc. You get the picture. That being one angle, the Gurukul system being replaced with the Western education system, and they established Christian missionaries. Christian missionaries, essentially, what their job was, is to spread Christianity amongst the Indians at that time. What that did is it essentially brought in a new religion into our country, also bringing its own set of agenda, its own set of propaganda with it, being that the underlying purpose of this being that they had to divide the population and weaken the prominent Hindu community in this country in order for them to take over. So the Christian missionaries did their job. They started converting people. They started spreading their ideologies, and the Hindus started becoming Christians, and the Gurukul system was replaced with the Western education system, and the Endowment Act was sort of had a weaker hold at that point, but still they took in most of the richer temples at that time, and they essentially looted it. Most of the temples were demolished during the Mughal times when they came, when they invaded and they looted our country. And then the British came in and they literally took over those temples and has actually started using them as banks in order to fund their operation in India and in order to fund their own poor country back in Britain, which was no longer poor because they had looted so many things from India at that point of time. So yeah, uh, this is what essentially took place, and even till today, that same thing continues, wherein instead of the British, it's the government, wherein we pay tax for the food that we eat, for which we are paying money, upon which we are paying tax through the money that we earn, upon which again tax is levied upon, and we spend money, we pay tax, we earn money, we pay tax, we buy a vehicle, we pay tax to ride it upon the road that we've already paid tax on, and to drink the water upon which we already pay tax and bills upon, and to live in our houses for which we have already paid tax on, to use the electricity that we again pay tax on. Every single thing is being taxed. It's essentially equivalent to not having rights upon your own hard earned income. And the rich and the wealthy, essentially the entire tax system being designed for the rich and the wealthy to get away with by establishing trust funds and multiple other resources through which they can be impacted, essentially zero impact upon them, but the entire impact being laid upon the middle class man who's just trying to make ends meet and not even being able to do that 100% because nothing is in their hands anymore and everything that's in their hands is being given to the government. Again, we literally went from talking about temples to taxes, but yeah, that was my opinion on that.
Yeah, you're right, because this is no longer a religious thing. Again, if we go back to the origin of it, this goes way more than the religious aspect. First and foremost, let's talk about the law which came in 1817. So this is the first, the Endowment Act, which was brought in, specifically targeted one religious belief. But this happened in the Madras Regulations 1817, and this was to
Yes.
bring monitoring and other things, provide grants for endowments and temples to be utilized, or diverted the funds to private individuals. So the entire agenda of this was to utilize the funds and then
Hmm.
divert it to other departments or other areas where the funds could be utilized, right? And
Yes.
if you look at it more, they go in terms of providing lands to other religious organizations, building schools, colleges, maintenance of and repairs of bridges and public buildings. All of this essentially comes from this particular act of 1817. So the British essentially brought this act to take the money from the temples to serve the public. In an
Yes.
idea, this sounds noble, which is, I agree with this. But what I don't agree is, if this has been done, it has to be done throughout, right? But since it was partial towards one, and bear in mind that yes, Hindu temples have been rich since the beginning of time. We have a
Hmm.
tradition of offering money, offering gold, offering silver. There are so many things, right? So there's a lot of money which is made in the temples. But the
Yeah.
question is, that has been used for the welfare of people, which is again a good thing. No dispute there. The only problem over here, only argument of contention is that if this is a good thing, it has to be followed throughout, not selecting one particular group, because that becomes partial immediately. But it started evolving at some point. This entire law then evolved later on into something called the Religious and again Charitable Endowment Act of 1927. And
Mhm.
what they did in the 27, this is where you see the how it moved from one point to another. First, it was in somewhere where you take the money and you help the people, right? And
Yeah.
again, all of this happened during the British time in Madras, right? Now known as
Mhm.
Chennai. Most of these,
Mhm.
because Madras High Court was quite famous back in time. We had the Mysore, Madras, we had Delhi, right? These are Hyderabad. These are famous places during the British time, and most of
Mhm.
these laws, since the British were the prominent in the southern certain areas like Malabar and Madras and Mysore and Hyderabad, you can see these laws mostly implemented over here. So they brought in this
Mhm.
again, the Madras Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowment Act of 1927. They brought a small rule with changes. They'll bring an endowment board, which will provide
Mhm.
and have appoint executive officers to the temples. This is the first change that took place. That they will
Yeah.
bring few officers for the
Mhm.
benefit of the temple. In other words, again, if you look at this from the current mindset, it's just how corporate works. You
Mhm.
brought in some management to handle it, and does its own. Essentially, again, how does it handle? You need to pay them. You need to take care of their well-being as well. But again, you know what? We can monitor funds more efficiently.
Mhm.
Again, until here, you might think, you know what, seems like a nice idea. You know what, people are benefiting. Let's not make an issue out of it. But then again, we had another change, right? So before we talk about the 1927, let's talk about the 1863 as well, right? 1863 is the interesting one. I forgot to mention that.
Mhm.
1863 is when they decided that the management will have trustee or trustees under the predefined set of beneficiaries, meaning whatever money comes out, there will be certain trustees or even beneficiaries set in place to make use of it. And these trustees could be the Waqf board, could be the social society trust, could be anyone that benefits out of these funds, right?
Yeah.
And that moved to the 27 where they appointed people. And did it stop there? Not really. Then comes 1957 again, August 28th, 1957.
Mhm.
Again, another discussion, Madras, Hindu Religious Act comes up, and over there they started putting more tax, started levying more tax or more contributions from. So they call it contribution back in time, but we will call it tax. That's essentially what it is. This was a major fraud. So they started
Mhm.
extorting money from the temples at that point. I'm not even going to call it tax anymore, right? So extorting money from the temples at some point. And this was constitutional, by the way. Nobody challenged because it was constitutional. And whatever is constitutional, you don't challenge it, right? Because even now we don't challenge if it's even if it's sometimes we may feel something wrong until unless it's changed. This is a simple thumb rule, right? Whatever the
Yeah.
law is, doesn't matter
Mhm.
how bad or how good it is, as long as it is the law of the land, you will abide by it. If you really
Yeah.
don't like something, you need to make effort to change it. Until it's changed, you follow it, no matter what.
Yes.
That's the
Exactly.
given law. No matter what you believe or you don't, this is something you have to follow, right? If you really
Mhm.
don't like something, then you need to put that effort to change it. And if you're not willing to change it, then live by it and go through it. Do not break the law as it is. The law of the land will always stand.
Yeah.
Correct? And this was what most people followed. 1951, the discussion happens, and they started levying more contributions towards from their temples towards it. And this was challenged again in the Madras High Court. Again in 1951, they challenged this. And when this was challenged, this was also taken to Supreme Court at that point of time. And
Mhm.
during the Supreme Court, this is where something interesting happened. The Supreme Court actually struck down this law stating that this is a draconian provision in the 1951 Act. So let's not have these in place anymore. The Supreme Court in 1951 did not want this anymore.
Yes.
So again, the reason why I'm saying all of this, I'm emphasizing because it's not that we are deciding this today and saying, you know what, this shouldn't have been there. People have already thought about it. Our ancestors have already thought about this. They did not like it. It went all the way to Supreme Court, and the judges over there also decided that this is not a law we should go on with. It's a British-made law to loot
Mhm.
and pillage. We should not go with it. But what happens after that is where again we have a problem because it's not outsiders who damage the country, it's the insiders pretty much. Who was there within the country, within the country, they themselves damage the country, and that comes in the form of Congress. So the Congress immediately,
Mhm.
passed another law called the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act of 1959 that snubs
Mhm.
the Supreme Court's order itself. And this is not the first time Congress has done it. They've also done it for the one for Indira Gandhi. Also did the same thing in 144 something. So some law which was passed, and she changed it as well immediately, right? And I think Rajiv Gandhi also was involved in a way of something. But imagine the court has removed something, but then you bring in a law which again snubs the court's decision itself. Supreme Court goes quiet. But
Hmm.
2 days before that, during the Madras High Court discussion, right? The Madras High Court makes a statement that's quote unquote management of temples has got nothing to do with the right to worship. A Hindu can worship as much as he wants, but the temple and its validity of who is managing it does not have nothing to do with it, right? So
Yeah.
the Madras High Court still ruled in favor of the existing law. Now, this entire thing again was going on, as you can see. 1951 is when it was predominantly challenged, and we also won at some point, but it was reversed. And later in 2020, so it's 2012, sorry, there was a petition filed by Swami Paramatmananda and
Hmm.
Dayananda as Saraswati as well, and both of them filed this petition in Supreme Court, which for more than 10 years was going on. The case was going on though, right?
Hmm.
And they also suggested that we need to make away with this law. These laws should no longer be there, and we have to make changes. Again, surprisingly, those laws have not been changed until today. We have those laws in place because for some reason, right, people
Hmm.
did not follow up or follow through with it. One, because it does make a lot of money to the government. Let's be frank.
Yes. Yeah.
We have a lot of temples and they make a lot of money, and by doing that the government is going to have 50% of its funds cut off right away, which I don't think so it'll even work for the economy anymore. At this point you can't just take it back as well. It'll just going to affect the economy big time,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And if you just cut off the economy by this rate, as in if you, like you stated, 50%, it's basically like cutting off the arms. And like the earlier point that you mentioned, the ones who ruin the country are not from outside, they might be from within as well. You never know. Of course, I do strongly agree with this point. We had so many opportunities to improve upon the mistakes, the abuse that the Britishers put towards us. And it really makes you wonder, were the British really that different from certain people who were in power in our country at that point of time after the Britishers left? Did they leave a part of themselves within the people itself who later came into power and later started behaving like them? It really makes you wonder. And yeah, one more point that you mentioned earlier, it's kind of like stuck with me. You stated that the British took money from the temples in order to serve the people. I strongly disagree with that. Anything that the British has done till now to this country, um, starting from the colonial loot and the invasion, they have done every single thing for their own benefit. They had no consideration of the people's well-being at any point of time. Every single rail that I've built, every single school that they've built, every single hospital that they have built, it was to serve their own greater purpose, their own greater well-being, and it was just a means. We were just the collateral damage at that point. So yeah, just wanted to get that out there.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to give some numbers in terms of what were these laws and what how much it affected. What was the contribution towards it? So I'm just going to bring this information from a book written by Dr. Anand Ranganathan. He's a
Mhm.
famous person, and also he does a lot of the debates as well. So just so that the authenticity of the information I'm sharing is validated over here. So he is known for his research, and he has put in his book called Hindus in Hindu Rashtra, Eighth Class Citizens and Victims of State Sanctioned Apartheid. That's a book which he has written. And in that book, he gives more numbers in terms of how many temples have been controlled and such, right? So, if at all, if anyone is willing to pick up that book and want to find out, he's covered multiple scenarios. I think we would like to talk about those things. For example, the right RTE Act, or the injustice towards the Kashmiri Hindus, or the Waqf Act, and so on. He covers a lot of topics. It's an easy read, small book, and it has a lot of information. It's a must-have book, I would say, in terms of if you're looking at data And if you're a data driven person, this is a must have book. You have the numbers precise here, right? But before I get to it, we mentioned about Swami Dayananda Saraswati, right? He also raised a
Yeah.
case in 2012. I forgot to mention what happened. That issue was never resolved because so at some point he complained that there weren't enough funds for him to do the duties for the towards the temple. So the court eventually, Tamil Nadu court eventually gave him the the verdict where it benefited him in a way, offering him 1 lakh, for daily pujas, something they offered, right? There's something which
Hmm.
should be given to them. But sadly,
Yeah.
2015, he passed away already, and he didn't live to see the entire verdict come out. So he that's what happens. So these proceedings take time. Before,
Hmm.
so this is again something which happened in 2012 to 2015. There is another long going concerns. For example, we had the Ram Mandir incident as well, long going debate and long very long drawn out court cases as well. There's another famous one which is the Varanasi or the Banaras Kashi Vishwanath temple, the Nyanmabi
Hmm.
temple, right, and mosque. Again, that's another ongoing dispute for almost 800 plus years. Someday we'll cover that as well. That's a long, uh, you know, drawn out political, legal, and that's a very interesting discussion. By the way, how many people were involved? How much the British lost their cool when they had to, compromise between the Hindu-Muslim fights, which they had to go through. It's a really interesting one. Someday we'll discuss that. But coming to the temples over here, right? So based on this, in the book, what he mentions is the government of just 10 states controlled 110,000 Hindu temples. And he talks about Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has more temples in the south as well as in the north as well. Tamil Nadu Temple Trust owns 478,000 acres of temple land. That's 470,000 temples. What I'm trying to say over here is that temples were not poor at all. So it made
Yes.
sense why the British started taking money. But the only problem I have right now is it should have been fair. At least you could have made like a rule where, okay, we'll take so much from you, the others contribute equally, but if not equally, at least give a small portion. So it's fair for everyone. That's all I'm saying to say. I'm not saying that don't take or let it go. That's up to them to decide. But it has to be fair. But the temples were not poor. From the time before the invasion happened in India, these places were very rich, right? So we're talking about 478,000 acres of land, or temple land, which are governed by the Tamil Nadu government, and they have
Hmm.
36,425 temples, 56 mutts, and for Karnataka, the figure is 34,563 temples total. These are all handled by the government, and the money that they get from these are no small amount. We're talking about in crores, right? It's a huge
Yeah.
money in each. Speaking of which, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Karnataka not recently, somewhere a couple of years back, they wanted to make some changes. They did bring about the discussion where they wanted to, relieve this, but it did not take. I have to investigate more on that. Apparently, that did not take flight. But Karnataka also wanted to push this one. If it did that, it's a good thing. I think this
Hmm.
was when back when BJP was in power. I'm not sure, but I think that's when this
Yeah.
started, I guess.
I think Yadurappa or it's some joint power had taken place, I think.
Yes, sir. And here's a fun fact, right? Again, Tamil Nadu, what it makes is they make around 6,000 crores per annum and 2.44 crores per square feet. That's the kind of money, 6,000 crores per annum. The earnings, that's the minimum earnings that they reported, 6,000 crores per annum in Tamil Nadu. So people might ask, how is this money coming? Where is the money coming from? How are they making that kind of money? Simple. Every time a devotee goes to a temple, there are so many things they do. People, I don't know if most people are familiar with that. If you go to temple, you put the money in the pujari's plate and you put the money in the undi as well, right?
Yeah.
And these are for small temples. But people also buy things. Pujari doesn't have to spend that money which is given to him or the undi to buy things, because people do this kind of you know you know donations to the temple. So which means that money can still be there for the benefit of the temple. But how much are you expanding the temple? For example, Tirupati is expanded to his max. Next thing, they have to buy the entire South India, right, with the kind of money they have. which is not something they're going to do because there is a cap. There is no, again, we don't have a concept of conversion or propagation of anything of that kind of notion in Hinduism. So next thing is just have the money to make more gold ornaments for the god, correct?
Yeah,
Or what most temples do, churches, so temples, churches also do this. Even this famous one would be the Gurudwar, right, or ISKCON,
yeah,
where they
yeah,
feed the poor people. Like ISKCON has fed almost six. I think in a day they serve 6 lakh people. Is if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. There 6 lakh or 1 lakh. I'm not sure, but they feed that many people. Same thing with Tirupati. Same thing with I think the highest would be the Gurudwaras, Punjab, the Golden Temple
yeah.
makes a lot of food and they serve a lot of people because that's the way they use funds. So apart from doing that themselves, the government also takes a huge cut, right? Imagine the kind of the kind of disproportionality in the way one group is handled, right? If the same was done to all religious and all institutions, now if you have to stop, if you stop, it's a big hit to the government. There's no way they're going to
Yeah,
stop it. But if they
yeah.
bring in others as well, we could do much better. But instead of the government getting fully involved on making mistakes over here, how they've done so far, this should have been in such a way that just the tax should be involved with the government, but the management should still be remaining, which should still remain with the temple itself or the mosque or the church. Maybe the funds they can collect as a tax, but the management should remain with them because they know what's best for them. I can't tell you what's best for your family. I am no one to tell you what you should eat, how much you should dress, so, how much you should spend for dressing, what outfit you should choose. I am no one to tell you that. You get to decide that because it's your money, right? So the same
Yeah.
way, that control should be given to the temple, church, and mosque, but they can still charge the tax. Is what I would say.
I mean, it is a good idea to be proposed on paper, but then if you really take away the aspect of the government being in control, then essentially that would mean that all of their corruption, all of their black money, everything that they plan to launder through those temples. Not saying that that's a fact, just, you know, just putting it out there. Everything that the government has control over, it's going to get away from their hands, and that's not something that they might let happen. As in, you might say that a benevolent leader might, go ahead and take those steps, but I don't think that that's going to happen anyway soon. And it's always a good idea to have things under control of people who know what they're doing. If you give the control of a temple who knows of to a person who knows the ins and outs of the temple, who knows how to manage it efficiently, who knows where to put those funds, who knows how to put it to good use, then yes, of course, the people are going to benefit from it, and the money is going to be put to good use, and the temple, even spiritually, the god is going to be happy with the service as well. But if you really want that sort of administration, then of course it's gonna either have to take place in Satyuga or any one of the other the three yogas, but it's not gonna take place in the fourth yoga, the Kali Yuga, of course. 100% confident on that. Nothing so good is gonna happen.
I agree. And here's the fun fact: we initially started about Tirupati Laddus, and the department or the committee is involved so much. They even control the size of the laddus. If you remember back in time, a couple of years back when
Yes.
I used to go to Tirupati, right, the laddus
Hmm.
were the size of a palm. My father's hand used to hold the laddus, a huge one. Now it's as big as Modichur laddus, right? Like it's tiny
Yeah.
little laddus. My friend recently got me one, and it was like time like what happened to it? Did you take half the laddu? No, that is the entire laddu you just got. No, this is just one portion of the laddu which I used to have. Like what happened to it?
Exactly. Yeah, so many years ago we used to get those laddus. It was enough to, give a sugar rush to three or four people. Now it's not even, damn, it's half the size, not even half the size, it's less than that.
Exactly, and that's another thing which Dr. Ranganathan mentions in his uh, book as well, he talks about the Tirupati Hundi collection in September 2022. From April to September 2022, the amount
Hmm.
goes 782 crores. From April to September 2022 is, and that's the amount. And the government valuation of the properties and total properties is around 7,123 acres, which is
Hmm.
valued at 85,705 crores. That's how much Tirupati is valued at this point, 85,702 up until 2022,
Damn. And
right?
imagine the government giving up on that. Never gonna happen.
Exactly. And don't tell me India is a poor country. Like, no, we are not a poor country. It's just that our resources are stuck in certain places. People are not, whatever money is coming out or whatever money is going out, neither temple is getting to enjoy it. It is going through the
Yeah.
process of different people, and all these people, as it has many people are involved, they keep skimming from the top. Each one takes a small cut, and by the time a
Yes.
person takes small cut, right, and all those cuts
Hmm.
come together, it becomes a huge fun. Just like in the movie Onion, right? The saying, if you
Yeah.
steal 5 paisa, is it a mistake? No. If five people do it, is a mistake? No. If 5,000 people every 5 minutes steal five paisa, will that be a big issue? Like, of course it is, right? That's exactly what's
Ex-
happening. Everyone's cutting from it. The government, and government is from central to state, and all the other places, the department, everyone's taking a cut. And everyone's taking a cut. And what is left is, you just have some funds. Now people say that India is a poor country. No, people who have taken cuts, they have a lot of wealth stored with them from these temples
Yeah.
as well, right? And we need to have them allocated accordingly. And that's the interesting one. The funds have to be allocated. And the whole point of bringing these guys in were to allocate the funds accordingly, but that backfired in a way that the funds were, again, mismanaged.
Yes. And stating that India is a poor country is like basically just writing off a fact as a false thing. So the amount of taxes that the middle class man pays by himself, with his blood, sweat, and tears, that alone is enough to, sort of sustain the country if we take out the aspect of corruption altogether. But of course, that's never going to happen. You literally have people who are still wanting to eat even after their stomach is about to burst with hunger. That's the amount of corruption, that's the level of corruption that it has gone to. And they are making it seem like we're poor so that they can get more funds out of it. That's the basic truth at this point. And whether people disagree or not, of course, many people are going to agree with me when I say that all the taxes that we pay, all the funds that we pay, it's not even a fraction for the benefits that we're getting. As in, we pay 1,000 rupees of tax in order to get the benefits equivalent to 1 rupee. That's the level that it has gone through. So, yeah, that's just sad.
It is indeed, though. So there's actually, when you mention about when you eat, when after the stomach is full, there's a saying
Yeah.
which reminded me of: every idli you eat after your stomach is full is someone else's idli, right? And that hits
Exactly.
really hard, right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much like, sometimes we don't know certain things from our perspective. Let's just be honest. No matter where you see yourself, middle
Hmm.
class, lower middle class, upper middle class, we all are
Hmm.
tied to a certain requirements, and we are not coming out of that requirement, and we never satisfy those things as well. We're always aiming to do something more or wanting something more, right?
Hmm.
And the same thing applies to the poverty line or the below poverty line or above poverty line. Somewhere over there, we can classify in multiple ways we want, but end goal is all of them are still wanting something constantly, right? Now the
Yeah.
question is, are the rich different? But they too have the same need. They too want something constantly. There is no such group or entity which would say, you know what, I let me just stop wanting now. Right? It's not going to happen. And corruption, we've not just our country. Every country's got corruption. There is no doubt about it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And people who say like, no, my country is perfect, maybe not. We don't know. We haven't been to all these countries, so we can't say. And people who also say like other countries are doing better, like take this country, take that country, for example. You haven't been to all those countries, so you don't know
Yeah.
much. You don't know much about what's happening in your own country. So don't tell me what's happening in some other country. You are not qualified to speak on that, right?
Hmm.
Not am I. But the idea is there is some level of corruption everywhere. Do we have potentially more corruption at some point? Of course we do. The question is not disputing them, but accept them and then find a way to fix them. By not accepting them, you are still arguing that like yours is a perfect world, like there's no problem with my country. It's still going to put you in a bad spot. Nor are you
Mm-hmm.
accepting it and not doing anything about it is going to put you in a bad spot, right? And that's the whole problem we have. We have funds, we need to manage them accordingly. If I'm not mistaken, we just surpassed Japan as well, right, as the most
Yes.
powerful countries in Asia. Our
Yes.
economy is improved, we're doing really good as a country, we're doing really good. I know for a fact this cannot be changed, they won't take this law back, but we need to bring everyone in just so that there is that equality, right? We're talking about secularism, we're talking about equal laws to everyone, which means apply to everyone, even if it's pleasure or pain, it has to be equal, right? So one side does not take all the burden while the
Mm-hmm.
other side gets the benefit. It's not a fair way to run it, right? And if at all they're talking about no other communities also need time to build themselves. I think since 1812 up until 2024 is sufficient time to build other countries up as well. I think they have given a a fair start line. I mean, probably a fair a lead, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's time to bring everyone in. And by doing that, maybe we can actually have a control, and not just taking them in, but also at the same time having the control to the temple itself. When I mentioned about the size of the laddu, when the temple controls size of the laddu, and
Mm-hmm.
Swami Dayana Saraswati also mentions what rituals are done, when the rituals are done, all of them have been governed by these departments, which is not fair because these departments are not who understand what is required for the temple or what its traditional or religious aspects are. Like
Mm-hmm.
now coming back to Tirupati again, right? If someone over there
Yeah.
would understand the sanctity of what a laddu is, why do they offer that? A 300-year-old tradition you mentioned initially. They don't understand
Mm-hmm.
any of those things, nor will they care about any of those things. If they don't care about any of those things, they would find a way to, again, they would always find a way to make sure that this is not something that affects them. Meaning,
Yeah.
you need to cut corners as usual.
Exactly. And once you cut these corners, it sort of becomes a habit for them. As in, okay, we have done it once, nothing bad happened, let's just do it again. And then they just keep on doing it. They just keep on repeating the cycle until people start noticing it, but they don't have the power to do anything. So they just carry on. And if they get an opportunity, they're going to cut corners too. So it just becomes a part of the default human nature at this point. Everyone is looking to cut corners. Everyone is looking to go out there for their own benefit. Nobody's thinking about, okay, if I do this bad thing to another person, it might actually, fire back in a bad way to me itself. Nobody's gonna think that.
Yeah, that's a fair request, right? This is not something which you're asking for more, right? You're not asking anything for more special treatment, just a fair treatment, and the fair treatment should be such a way that it benefits everyone, right?
Hmm.
And after reading those numbers from Dr. Anand Ranganathan, and I wouldn't let go of that money in a single day. You know what? Okay, fine, you can take your 8,400 crores and keep it yourself. I don't need your money. I wouldn't even be that arrogant as well, right? Because that's huge amount, right?
Hmm.
And I don't know if I'm getting all of it.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm getting 1,000 crores from 8,000. No, forget about that's too much as well. 100 crores from the
Yeah.
8,000 crores for something for my benefit. For example, I have a new sewage system in my area. I benefited as well, right? I can't spend the
Hmm.
100 crores myself. So
Hmm.
we are benefiting, yes, but that benefiting also should be from a point where it should be clear and not waste.
Yes, and so many of these projects, yeah, like you mentioned, a sewage system. If a certain area needs a new sewage system and it's gonna cost 100 crores, the actual bill that's being shown over there, it's not gonna be 100 crores. It's definitely not gonna be just 100 crores. It's going to be more than 300 to 400 crores at that point. And the extra amount that's going to be shown over there is going to go straight into the pockets of the people who are in power over there, who are involved with that project. So yeah, you want to work for the benefit of people, but at the same time you want to work for your own single benefit. And let's not mention the whole point of making the switch system. They make it in such a way that it's going to be ruined in the next couple of years, or 1 year, even was 1 year, so that they can get the tender again in order to work on that same sewage system, and they can just gobble up another couple hundred crores at it. That's how I feel the management works. Again, just for documentation purposes, I'm just stating my own opinion out here, not pointing any fingers. So yeah, just want to get it out there.
Yes, sir, I agree with that. There has to be. I mean, we can't stop this the money that has been taken from the top, but at least we could say is like reduce the amount and make the best out of it. Like, don't do the same job multiple times. Like, the Delhi. I think is it the Delhi airport
Yeah, I think
which
it's the Delhi one.
damaged. Yeah, so what is the point of doing the same thing twice? Right, that's waste for both the time. Like, both the time the money is waste. So ensure the quality stands, and then whatever's left over, please take it. And I know when I say leftover, I'm not talking about 100 rupees or 200 rupees. I'm talking about in thousands of hundreds of crores. Like,
Yeah.
when you do that kind of, if you are able to give really good quality materials and good quality products, somewhere deep down we agree, you know what, fine, we can take a little bit, fine, no problem, you've given me such a good thing. But you give me airports like in Delhi, and then you take 1,000 plus crores, and that doesn't make any sense, right? Or you give the free bus ride for all the women in Karnataka, but you take the funds from SC/ST
Mhm.
community, and then you just do rotation over here. Like, that's not the right way to go about it, right? If you have the funds, promise something. If you don't have the funds, don't promise anything. Taking from one side and putting in another, and taking from that side, putting other, and then end up in 184, 87,000 crores or lakh crores of scams. What's happening in Karnataka, or whatever the arguments, discussion going on at this point, is not
Mhm.
the right way as well. And
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
and we
actually
spoke
one
about.
more. Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, can't believe
No,
I'm saying this, but I'm actually contradicting my own point. I said that, the earlier point that I stated, wherein they just keep redoing the same projects. They make the projects in such a way that it gets ruined in the next 1 or 2 years, so that they can get the project tender again, so that they can gobble up the funds again. So imagine that they stop doing that. Imagine that the projects are actually good quality, and it does not need any redoing in for the next, say, 10 to 15 years. That's how good of a quality of work that they've done. What about the workers that are going to work on those projects, the laborers? I'm talking about the daily wage workers. So imagine that you're not getting the project back for the next year or for the next 2 years. If you end up making a intentionally making a bad job out of that project, you're going to get the project back in the next couple years, and you're going to end up giving work to the daily wage workers, to the laborers who ultimately depend upon that day's earnings for that day's foods. So there's two sides to this. There's not just one side wherein we say that the politician or the the person who's managing these projects is a bad person who's corrupt and all of these things. There's two sizes. If that person is not corrupt enough to make a bad job out of it, it's going to end up costing the jobs of many more laborers. They're going to miss out on a huge job, and it can keep them employed for a couple months, and it can be the source of their foods for those couple months. What about them if this project just stays untouched for the next 10 to 15 years because of the good quality of work that they've done? Ultimately, you just end up with having no answer altogether, and you just literally end up scratching your own head as to why is it like this.
I agree. Anyone who understands the reality knows that nothing can be fixed the first time itself. These are continuous things, right? These are continuous improvements. There's no way a road is done once and done, right? It's like the road is going to last for another 10,000 years. No, these need improvement, right? But the quality matters. You mentioned the work. even though they are continuous, the quality matters as well. The same job cannot be done 100 times just because of poor quality or because they wanted to scam. But if the work genuinely requires 2 or 3 attempts to be done every five, like you said, like, let's just say we make it a rotational thing every 5 years or every 3 years, the roads get updated, right? A
Yeah.
new set of roads being put on top. That creates constant job flow as well, and that's sustainable job as well, rather than having multiple contractors who show up and do all kinds of scams and put a road or just lay out a road in such a way that it just falls apart in 2 or 3 months. That's a stupid thing to do. It's a waste of
Mm-hmm.
not just our money but also our intellect. We look like idiots, right? After paying all those taxes, and how much taxes that we pay, after paying all those taxes, we end up going in potholes and then get our vehicles damaged and then go get that repair, pay another set of tax for that. Because it's a cycle, nonsensical cycle of just paying taxes at some point, right?
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, there's so many things which we could do. We leave it at that. At some point, people would have to get their own opinion based on whatever information they've acquired. So we've shared as much as we could, right, in terms of
Mhm.
what we wanted to discuss. Let them make their own opinions based on that. But when we discuss about the temples that run, which are run by the government, again, this is not something which is risen recently. I think the current issue right now is people are asking it to be removed. I've seen people who
Yeah.
are pushing for that, but this issue has come in before as well. So this particular article from Indian Express was in 2022, and in that 2022 article, they talk about in Jan 2020, talk about that Hindu temples are being run by the government and why they're run by the government, whereas others don't have the same restrictions, right? And it goes on in length and talks about different communities and how they utilize and they manage their institution. These institutions are not bound by the government. Why is one particular community have to deal with it? Which is a sensible question, fair question, right? And it also talks about the independence the government had been intruding in affairs of Hindu religious institutions since the time, like whether it be the belief system, worships, or whatnot. And it's also provided 100 crore Hindus in the country are affected by these kind of actions. For example, Diwali crackers were banned, and so many things. Again, over here, people Hindus don't make a fuss about things and just move on. You know what? Fine, let it be. We always find there's good thing in whatever is like, okay, yeah, crackers are noisy. Okay, let's stop, no problem, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
do that, and that is continuously led to another set of problem where no matter what you say or do, they're okay with it, kind of thing, right? Is you can tell them and they'll stop doing it. That's also something which is, in a place. So more of these is again in terms of the difference in politics or whatever it is. Uh, Oh, so remember we had a discussion earlier regarding the Karnataka government did do it. Actually, in Chief Minister Bommai's plan, I think it was last government though. They tried to push this one,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
And again, we've had pushbacks from Congress, and that goes on. And talking about Karnataka in general, right? Tamil Karnataka government is a historic blunder. It's a moment of historic blunder. Shipmo contains temples and the wealth of the government. And again, we're talking about Karnataka's 35,000 temples, and they're placed in three different categories, and it generated around 1,400 crores in this last couple of years. That's the kind of money that they've generated,
Damn.
right? Karnataka, like, dang, that's a lot of money. 1,000
Dang.
crores.
That's a lot of money.
And so here's what thing, right? The argument goes that Shukumar says that the offerings Hindu temples as revenues and just like excise or sales tax and so on. So it's just tax that you're taking. And like, no problem. We can take money from the temples. No one's got a problem with it because Hindus themselves don't have a problem with it. Why would they take a couple of Hindus who would probably point out these errors? Like, why are we
Mhm.
doing this? Other than that,
Mhm.
most people don't have a problem with it, right? They don't know. First of all, they don't know this has been done. People who
Mhm.
know about it, they let it go in name of secularism. They're like, what, let's not interfere in these things, right? So it's always not a major issue as because you're a majority, but understand you're still a minority elsewhere, right?
Yes.
Maybe in India you're a
Exactly.
majority, but take it out, you're still a minority though. You're like third, right? And And forget about being number one, two, three. That's irrelevant. What we need to understand is, as anyone who's born in this country needs to uphold its sanctity in terms of the history, our tradition, our culture, our values, which is older than most people out there. Most religions, most cultures, most countries out there, we are older than them. So for us to protect these things becomes our ultimate priority more than anything
Yeah.
else. That's what we should be aiming for, not to be number one or number two. That's irrelevant. We need to be long lasting. We should be there until the end. That's the idea people should go about, right?
and
And this is just the
and
Indian
the
Express.
Yeah, and
Yes, sir.
the most amount of misconceptions happen amongst us itself, wherein in order to protect ourselves, we sort of take it as a competition, wherein we try to put down others in order to step on their heads and climb up on top. And that's the biggest downside to this. People just don't think of it as sort of fighting for their they don't just think of it as fighting for their own survival. They think of it as you are supposed to put others down in order to survive for your own. But they don't realize that you can exist at the same time as others. You can exist with other communities as well. But yes, somewhere along the line, there was this whole competition nature put in place in order for politics to take place, for the whole divide and rule policy to work. So yeah, that's the gist of it.
Exactly, because if you look at the politics game, right, people who might not look into that won't see it properly. One set is controlled by BJP, which is the Hindu sect, and anyone who's not, again, they chose this group as who they want to represent, that's the Hindus, right? And the other section, which is the Christians, Muslims, other Sikh, other communities, that Congress has taken over those. Collectively, they more or less form equal, right? So, which means either of them have a monopoly on one of those things. So, people forming in these communities, they argue themselves, but these guys are benefiting, both parties, right? It's like they had an agreement. I'll take the Hindus, like it's like cricket match when you play kids, right? Like I take this person, you take that person. I take this person, you take that person. Like that is how
Mhm.
the government has been operating in not just India, like not just in Karnataka, all over India. You can see them. That's how
Mhm.
they've split, but we tend to focus on the distractions they throw at us sometimes. There is a small, what, you guys have been cool for such a long time. Here's an something that you can fight about. Go bark, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So sad. And this is just
So
Indian Express.
yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh no, no, I was just agreeing with you on that.
Yes, sir. And we've had the Hindu as well, with similar things. Why are the temples state run? And they also mentioned that in 2021 they posted this article in April, and 2022 they've again updated this article that
Hmm.
why are these state run, and why can't they be, you know, for everyone? Again, this goes back to the original arguments and other issues that came up in the Madras High Court and the original British law.
Hmm.
And later in Jan 2023, again, this was brought in by the Hindu again. They brought up like, what is happening with these temples? Should we do something about it? I think 2023, people started paying more attention. People started,
Hmm.
I think I would say this, all the thanks would be to some people, a few people, a handful of people who are actually pointing these things out. One of those
Yeah.
people, my favorite, would be Dr. Anand Ranganathan. So his book, which is the Hindu Rashtra, was an eye opener for me. Once I read this one, I understood like, oh, these are things that I've never heard of before. I never knew there was a temple controlled by the government. Like there are some people who point out these things which we never initially knew about, right? You can
Yeah.
listen to their discussions or arguments, you would know.
Hmm.
But again, it's a small portion of people out of the huge crowd. A small portion of people know these things. More people get to know these things,
Hmm.
maybe they could have a better understanding. There could be smarter people amongst us who can find a better solution on how to get either rid of these things or maybe make the best out of these things as well. You don't have to completely remove these things. If again, if there is a way that this can serve as a benefit for others, we can still use it
Hmm.
though. We don't have to exclude them. But again, if this is going to be the problem that it's going to affect the belief system of many people and it's going to cause communal tension, then we have to let go of it. End of the day, this is a British rule which came in to siphon funds from the temples. This was a rule the British, known for their looting, the pillaging, right? For
Yeah.
the thieving and all those things that British is known for. They brought in a law to steal or take money from the temples. The British left. Why is its laws still hanging around here? That's the takeaway I would say. If you're not happy with what they did, nor should you be happy with all the rules they put across. It's time to reevaluate these things and probably come up with a better law.
Yes. I think it's probably best to say that the things that the British have established for us, that was meant for a time when they were trying to establish their own monarchy. At that time, they were uh, trying to sort of divide the people of one country and force them not to be one. And it's high time to get rid of those things, those outdated things. And I do am aware that some how do I put this politely? Some groups of people might be against getting rid of those British ideologies. Uh, some groups of people might prefer those type of ideologies wherein it's best to divide the people, and then in order to rule them, you can just sort of bring together these fights, put these communities to fight each other, and that's how politics is gonna carry out. But yeah, ultimately at the end of the day, the middle class man is the one who suffers. So that's something that can change, but I doubt that it's gonna change anytime soon.
Correct. So we started a discussion with the Tirupati Laddu incident. Is it right? Is it wrong? What are the things? So for me, the idea is that it affected. I think we'll have to circle back where we came from. We went to the root cause and we spoke about the root cause a lot. So which is the temple which is being run by the government. But coming back to Tirupati Laddu incident, is if everything which is required for an analysis to be precise, for example, if there was no intervention between, if this was not done in any fraudulent indications which have been displayed in terms of how the analysis or how the the test was done, everything checks out correctly and the test is accurate and the sample is accurate and everything goes well, which means
Mhm.
this entire thing affected hundreds of millions of Hindus who don't consume meat. It affected them deeply. And even if
Yes.
it's not true, it still affected the reputation of all these people and the institute and everything around it as well. Either which ways, there has been damage that has been done here, the damage which cannot be repaired. Damage will,
Mhm.
linger on for a very long time, right? And going
Yes.
forward, the trust which people would have in terms of even religious items, even God themselves, would be questionable, and
Mhm.
every single thing would become a doubt going forward, and there is no coming back from that. But hopefully people who have been involved in this are punished and new laws or new rules should be implemented to fix these things. Governance has to be strict and has to be in place to fix these things.
Yes, exactly. I do completely agree with that.
Yes sir, so that's all for me today though. Do you have anything else you want to add, or any topics that you want to bring up next week? Anything that you want to highlight? Like we mentioned about certain laws which are not applicable. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
Not something in particular, but yeah, we can talk about the upcoming amendment bills that's gonna affect the Waqf board, or we can get into another few things that have been impacting the life of the ordinary common man, the taxes, and the lack of answerability of certain people towards the taxes. Yeah, so yeah, there are so many things that we can talk about. But yeah, next podcast, I think, yeah, we're just gonna go with the flow.
Yes, sir. So I think we had a good discussion today as well, though.
Yeah,
And if nothing else, then I think we're done.
yes, sir.
All right, well, thank you for joining, and you have a nice evening then.
You too. Thank you.
So, thank you. Take care.